All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be volume 2 in a series that I recently started called Black Man, Do You Need Mental Help? And this edition will be featuring Mr. Antonio Brown, the superstar wide receiver formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Oakland Raiders, and New England Patriots. And firstly, brothers, let me state that for those of you who read the scriptures, I'm sure that you'll be familiar with Proverbs 16 and 18, which tells us that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. And that sentiment is consistent with one of the main ideologies of this current time period that we're living in, that being self-worship. It's the cool thing now to be a quote-unquote atheist or a nihilist and to allege that you have all the answers. That's a major component in the doctrine that's being pushed on so-called black people known as being woke, that you're going to question everything, be a contrarian, and mistake that for being erudite. And in all reality, the highest form of existence is servitude. I'll say it again. The highest form of existence is servitude. We're all servants, and you'll never feel a greater sense of satisfaction in life than accepting the fact that you're a servant and understanding the best way for you to express your servitude, i.e. your gratitude to the Most High. We're all servants to the Most High, and in the fleshly form, we're all servants to one another. And I'm particularly speaking to you so-called black men. We've lost the understanding of how to be a servant to one another, and that's why there's so much antipathy that exists between the so-called black man. And the reason why we've lost that sense of servitude is because we no longer understand our culture. We no longer understand our God. So now we've been separated from our power. And even the entertainment industry or Hollywood knows this. That's why they made the film The Book of Eli about 9 or 10 years ago, starring Mr. Denzel Washington. And the title, The Book of Eli, literally translates to the book of my power, because they know that the Bible is inextricably linked to the so-called black man and either his rise or his demise. Once we return to an understanding of the importance of real humility, which does not mean emasculating yourself for other demographics or other groups, but the empowerment through the acceptance of servitude, productive servitude, that's when so many of these mental illnesses that plague our community will go away. I did a 2-part series on Antonio Brown called Pupil of Narcissus, which basically were the first 2 parts in an ongoing series, because there are a lot of narcissists in this society today. And that concept, once again, is being pushed amongst our people to look at yourself as your own God. When you decide to conform to that mentality, you're always going to end up depressed. And not to digress, but I also have series on why people in this society are so depressed. And once again, it's because they're no longer looking for inspiration from the divine power. They're trying to galvanize themselves from within themselves. And that's not the way to go. It's like an ant colony trying to do their own thing. The power of the ant colony is that everyone knows their role and does their role, and they're not looking for self-exaltation. That's why the ant society or the bee society is studied by scientists, studied by sociologists or social engineers. How is it that they're able to establish such rigorous understandings of what their role is to make what they do beneficial for everyone else? They study the animal kingdom and they try to socially engineer society based on what they see in the animal kingdom. In order for us to rise up out of the morass that we're in this society, in this captivity, which is what it is for the so-called black man, we have to reject and rebuke anyone who comes at us with this nonsense about venerating ourselves. And Antonio Brown is a victim of that mentality. He is mentally ill. He's spiritually ill. And he's trying to hide it behind a facade of venerating the quote-unquote call God, which is actually talking about the goat god, the quote-unquote Baphomet, a.k.a. Pan, a.k.a. Khnum, a.k.a. Benebdejet, which is the deity of the entertainment industry. There's no doubt in my mind that that is who he worships, as well as many other top-level athletes in the entertainment industry. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, welcome back. Whitlock and Wiley. Michael Vick is back with us. Time now for Darnell's question of the day. Darnell, take it away.
Yes, sir. Let's move to Antonio Brown. He keeps creating more drama. After being released Friday, Brown...
No, he's not really creating drama. He's creating chaos, because he's an agent of chaos, as I've been telling you brothers for a very long time.
People wondering if he was going to retire, tweeting out, quote, "Will not be playing in the NFL anymore. These owners can cancel deals, do whatever they want at any time. We will see if the NFLPA will hold them accountable. Sad they can just void guarantees any time. Going on $40 million in 2 months."
Well, Antonio Brown, I don't think that you understand that the concept of guaranteed pay is contingent on you fulfilling your portion of the guarantee that you're going to be an asset to their organization. Antonio Brown is really a victim of wokeness. As I've told you already, the quote-unquote woke revolution is being fed through the internet, and pea-brain athletes who have no idea what society is actually about. They've been entitled for the vast majority of their lives. They love to give you this rags to riches story, but for the most part, most of these players in the NFL and the NBA basically have known that they're going to be professional athletes since they were 16, 17 years old. Is Antonio Brown an exception? Yes, because he was not highly recruited going to college. He also was not a high draft pick. But after a while, they know what their place is, and they become accustomed to being entitled. That leads them into worshiping themselves. The more they're venerated, unfortunately for them, because they don't understand that it's to their detriment. But as I've stated in the past in previous videos about the concept of being quote-unquote woke, that's directly linked to what is known as cultural Marxism, meaning the natural state of societal combat between the role of the proletariat or the worker and the elite or the quote-unquote ruling class. Antonio Brown actually thinks that the same rules should apply to him as applied to Bob Kraft, even though he's a worker, not an owner. Why does he believe that? Because he is a cultural Marxist, i.e. a Luciferian. He's fallen down the woke rabbit hole.
We'll see if they pay up. When they ask you guys, do you think Brown should play again this year?
Before they answer, for those of you brothers who saw Antonio Brown's appearance on the LeBron James show, The Shop, which is basically a portal into the woke rabbit hole, there was a portion where Antonio Brown was speaking to LeBron and he was asking him what his plans were for after basketball. He asked him, "Are you trying to be a commentator?" And LeBron said, "No, I want to be an owner." And Antonio Brown quickly agreed. He was like, "Yeah, I don't understand some of these guys on TV, blah, blah, blah." And then he went into his little Shannon Sharp spiel. Antonio Brown was showing you from right there that he believes or believed that he's equivalent to the owner. And that's really why he was so upset at Big Ben. Remember, he said Big Ben thinks he's the owner. Well, Antonio Brown also thinks that he's the owner of the franchise. He believes that he's equivalent to the Rooneys or Bob Kraft.
Allegedly, there's several teams interested in him, and I think that after the NFL has their investigation, I think sometime around Thanksgiving, there's going to be some teams that'll make a play for AB.
I have little doubt that there are going to be a bevy of teams that try to sign Antonio Brown. At the end of the day, he's one of the most magnificently gifted wide receivers that I've ever seen.
I think it would be best for him as a human being if he didn't play this year.
Right, but his decision-making skills have not shown that he has an understanding of what's the best thing to do for him at any particular moment.
Come back next year with a clean slate, hopefully a new attitude.
It would not surprise me if the New England Patriots tried to re-sign Antonio Brown next season if he sits out this entire year. Wouldn't shock me at all.
I'd like to see him focus on AB the rest of this year.
I hear you. It certainly smells like something's going on between the ears that needs to get corrected.
What's going on is that he's fallen down that woke rabbit hole known as social media. There are a bevy of idiots who are going to give him likes and thumbs up. Many prominent athletes. No matter what happens with Antonio Brown, you always see the same guys in his comment section, including Kevin Durant, another agent of chaos, giving him the prayer emoji and all this other dumb shit. And that's the real issue. There's no one there to tell Antonio Brown, brother, you need to log off that bullshit. 95% of people who are on social media are fucking miserable in real life. Don't let all them fake photos and shit fool you. 90% of those motherfuckers are miserable in real life. People who are addicted to social media and putting up all those pictures of themselves. Unfortunately, AB is one of those people. And he's living vicariously through the fake image that he's projecting. I promise you, he's not that person in real life when it comes to how satisfied he is with his decisions. But he's gone too far right now. He's gone too far, and he has no one to tell him that he's wrong and to try to redirect the course of his life, because as he's already stated, he lives according to the concept of foolish pride.
Fix to get aired out and addressed. But then I take a deep breath and say, what has AB really done? All this smoke?
Make a complete ass of himself.
You get there and it's just one little match. Think about it. 2 accusations that you're innocent of until you're proven guilty. You cursed out your GM in the same sports culture where I've seen guys knock out their teammates and to return back to play that same week. Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Steve Smith Sr., I can keep going. So then I look at, oh, you cursed out your GM, all right, whatever. The point of this is, who am I to tell this dude that he doesn't need the game of football or the structure and the joy it provides him? Because we don't live in a parallel universe to understand what AB looks like without football. It's a lot of guesswork, but we don't know what he's going to turn into without football.
Well, we know what AB looks like without proper guidance. And people do need instruction. The issue is that he's too much of a narcissist to accept it right now. The path that he's taken, I just don't think can be changed or altered until he crashes. He's an addict. He's addicted to the attention that he's receiving through social media. He's crafted a cult of personality for himself, similar to an Odell Beckham, who's the next person up, by the way. Major narcissist, self-worshipper. As has already been stated, he introduced himself by saying, "I'm Odell Beckham, I am him." As I've told you brothers in the past, that handle of "I am" is a very covert, surreptitious way for Luciferians to tell people that they worship themselves as their own God. You'll see it all over the internet. I am so-and-so. I am this person or that person. The concept of I am connotes the eternal one, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega.
I don't feel like I'm qualified for that position.
I just think I agree with Whit. I think Antonio should take some time off, get away from the game of football, get away from what he's dealing with, you know.
I actually don't think that getting away from football is going to help him as much as what he really needs to get away from, that being that damn internet. That's social media, boy. It's nothing but a bunch of idiotic yes men. Or people who are coming against him, but not in an intelligent or informative way. Proverbial quote-unquote haters, per se. Idiots in the crowd.
It's not going to go away. It's a personal issue, but, you know, life's going to continue to go on. And he has to make some changes. Obviously, there has to be some form of mentorship for him. And that's what I want to see out of Antonio. I want to see him sit.
Right, but here's the issue with Antonio Brown. Here's the issue with him. He does have a certain degree of sociopathy, meaning he understands how to put forth a mask to make you think that he's receptive to what you're saying, when in all reality, he's going to do whatever the hell he feels like doing. I'm not quite sure if people get the depth of the issue that he's having. I'm not going to call him a malicious or a malignant character per se, but I will say that he has the potential to be that, from what I see. He has to be able to accept help first. And I don't think that he's truly humble enough to do that.
Out, gather himself, figure out what transpired, look back and say, okay, I could have done this better, I could do this better.
Well, the number one problem that he has is with the women, which is normally the so-called black man's problem and men period's problem. The woman will get you in more trouble than anything else if you allow it. Prior to the accusations from the women, he was just viewed as being someone who was a numbskull, was confrontational with other players, with coaches, with GMs, but he could still get a job in the NFL. But when you compound that with some of the accusations from the women and his inability to disassociate from those accusations by going back and forth with those females in a quote-unquote threatening manner, even though he thought he was being slick by including his lawyer in the text thread. I have no idea why he thought that that was going to be a slick thing to do or why his lawyer would allow that. Still, he was in a relatively good stead until he showed that he was unable to keep himself away from the women. And the woman in general, if you don't know how to compartmentalize that factor, they will destroy you. There's no doubt about that, because that is their essential nature as agents of chaos, agents of destruction per se. The woman gets off on that, man, and you have to understand that. And I'm not blaming them, I'm blaming him, because he has to understand things on a far higher level. But because a lot of cats are not instructed properly on the nature of the woman, they're constantly falling prey.
I shouldn't have done this. I need to apologize to this person.
And also on the nature of themselves. Once again, I'm not trying to absolve him. If what many of these females are saying is true, him entering the room with just a washcloth over his rod and all that other nonsense, I mean, come on, man. That's just buffoonery.
Person. And then try to land on my feet next year. I think that's the best case scenario for him. He's not going to be in his right mind. Teams got to be able to trust you. Your teammates got to be able to trust you. It's different when you go in that locker room. You just can't bounce around, from team to team and think that the respect level is going to be there because everybody's reading and looking at what's going on.
One of the things I thought about this weekend, Mike, that I'm glad you're here, I can ask about, because, again, I tweeted out this weekend that I think there needs to be a spiritual awakening and understanding.
Well, in order for him to have a quote-unquote spiritual awakening, he's going to first have to accept that he's not God. He's going to have to throw off the shackles of whatever his current adherences are. And I don't think that he's going to do that, because I believe that he called on that demon that he called God way back in the early portion of his life when he was at rock bottom. And whatever that demon or that entity was answered him and gave him certain insight on how to rise to the level that he is now. And he shows a lot of obeisance, a lot of respect, a lot of veneration to that energy of the quote-unquote call God. That's why he throws up that what they call the hang 10 hand sign. That's for the horned God. That's for the horned entity. That's all that's about. And that's why I did the video on Antonio Brown a while ago. I believe that it was called Antonio Brown Now Showing His Dark Side for the Baphomet, where he bought the 2 goat head rings. He was letting people know what he actually is about.
For Antonio, he talks about calling God and having a relationship with God. His behavior doesn't match up.
No, actually it does. It's just that when he says call God, he's not referring to the God of the Bible. He's referring to the God of Hollywood, and really the God of this world, the goat God.
Mistreating people consistently.
Right, but that's a part of venerating Heru, or Asar, or the Ba of Asar, known as Khnum. You do whatever the hell you want. That's what Aleister Crowley stated. Do what thou wilt. That's the whole of the law. The law is love. Everything that you do is love. You are your own God.
I wonder if perhaps a relationship with Tony Dungy could be a benefit to Antonio Brown.
That would be amazing. The relationship with Tony Dungy would change his life dramatically. A relationship with me, and I'm speaking to Antonio directly, would be so much better than probably what you got in relationships that you have with other people. Not discrediting anybody, but I'm a qualified guy to say, look, I've learned from my mistakes. I've learned through other people, and they've helped me, and I can help him.
Well, that's nice. I hope that works, but I doubt it. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to cast too many aspersions on the brother, because everyone has the potential to be a better person. But from what I see of him, I just don't see it. But who knows?
When they talk about therapy and what really needs to be unveiled, people don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood. If you think about it, what happens is if you're misunderstood, you're on a forever mission for that, where other people are looking at it from a different perspective, just trying to correct the behavior.
Yeah.
Well, no disrespect, brother, but that sounds like a lot of low-level psychobabble. That sounds nice. That people don't need to be corrected. They just need to be understood. Well, in society, we have an overall framework that is macrocosmic. That means what? We all have to adhere to what are known as laws and codes, because that's what establishes order and structure. When there are certain people who choose to buck that concept of adhering to laws and codes, then they have to be the recipient of consequences. Antonio Brown has shown that he doesn't care about the consequences, so he has to be helped, because he does show sociopathic tendencies, whether they be considered low-level or higher-level sociopathic tendencies. He's constantly conveyed himself as being someone who believes that he is quote-unquote above the law, and that's going to come back to bite him. We cannot continue to coddle people just because they're hyper-talented or they choose to quote-unquote question authority. He has to understand that it's to his benefit to actually go along with the codes of conduct of the land, as long as they're not an attempt to emasculate him or demean him as a human being. And there's been nothing that I've seen thus far that has even come close to there being an attempt to demean him in any way. He has to understand who he is. Now, I had no real issue when he forced the trade out of Pittsburgh, because I understood a lot of his complaints, especially when it came to Big Ben. This is a person who, as I've already stated in other videos, it's very clear that Rapelessburger was sexually assaulting women. No doubt about it. Antonio Brown has evaluated the charges against him, or the allegations against him, I should say, in juxtaposition to Rapelessburger, and he's trying to claim himself to be the victim. I'm not quite sure how that could be when the NFL has not suspended you. They have not even put you on the exempt list. So that tells me that Antonio Brown has a victimization mentality, which, again, is another issue that people who have fallen down the woke rabbit hole have. They love to play the victim role even when nothing has happened to them yet. And then when you combine that with the attacks on Robert Kraft, that shows me that he's delusional. He thinks that he's on par with an owner. But just getting back to the point, yes, people do need to be understood, but they also have to understand themselves. That goes back to what I stated about understanding that you're a servant. When we understand that we're servants, then we're not always looking to see what everyone else can do for us. We're concerned about what our gifts are and how we could serve the best. Everybody can't serve the same way. You serve based on your gift to be a servant. Some people can serve through teaching. Some people can serve through giving. Some people can serve through entertaining. He, as a servant, is best as an entertainer. But he's not concerned with the serving aspect. He's concerned with the exaltation. And that's why he's encountering the problems that he has right now.
So,
Say it one way.
and Antonio has been on something, and it seems misaligned, but he's like, I want to be understood and taken for who I am.
Right.
So a lot of times when you deal with someone like this, you get caught up in content.
Yes.
I'm saying the right things, be around. He's caught up in context,
Right.
which is completely different today. If anyone's ever gotten in an argument with somebody and you're like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's because they are like, all you have to do is understand where I'm coming from.
Right.
Sound like you're talking about a debate or argument you've had with women. I don't think that that's really consistent with the conversation that we're having right now about Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown is showing some quote-unquote feminine ways and that he's an agent of chaos. But still, he's going to have to conform to a certain degree. If you're not ready to conform to certain, what he probably called universal truths or universal aspects about what makes a productive society, you're eventually going to be spat out. That's normally how it goes.
That will be the fix.
Right.
So, for Antonio,
The answer to this is
I'm not certain that taking him away is going to make him feel felt understood.
Right.
I think that will be the collective thought of fixing him,
Yeah.
but not understanding him.
football won't fix you. You know, I think football is just something that God has given us that allows us to be fruitful in our lives. And
I agree. And also to serve people by entertaining them. But once again, would it be a bad thing for Antonio Brown to step away from football? No, not really, as long as he's taking the appropriate steps to find out why it is that he has this incessant need to be a contrarian. But in my view, I already know why that is. It's because he worships himself as the proverbial manifestation of God here on the earth. And as long as he considers himself his own God, he's going to continue to have problem after problem after problem, because you're going to persist in your belief that you could do whatever you want to anyone else and you should never be held accountable for it. So that's the real issue. Are his spiritual beliefs, at least as I've assessed them to be, ever going to be addressed? We could talk about football all day, but a lot of this is just people speaking about the manifestations of the problem that he has and not the problem itself.
we work so hard to get to a certain point that, you know, we get to enjoy it, and it's what we work hard for. But your character is what's going to define you.
Say it.
You know, I think Antonio just has to figure out, like, where does my character lie? What can I do? How can I be a better person, better man? Got a lot of kids watching. A lot of people watching, man. Social media opens it up for everybody to pay attention. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing for him right now, but we gotta figure out the medium for this man.
Yeah, but when you start and you galvanize this much success from nothing, I even have this spirit in me that I had to talk myself out of, which is, oh, I could go back to nothing and it's all good, because that's where I came from. And the problem with where Antonio is now, he's in rarefied air and he's not feeling worthy and as qualified for where he is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's therapeutic. Yes, you need therapy. But last time I checked, his greatest therapy has been his occupation, has been his opportunities.
And that's
Well, we have to understand that he took that away from himself. The New England Patriots did not take that away from him. The Oakland Raiders didn't take it away from him. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't take it away from him. He took that away from himself. As a matter of fact, he's repeatedly stated that he does not need football. He said that himself. So you can't force something on him that he's not willing to appreciate himself. Once again, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before fall. I mean, you cannot get in the way of a lemming that's determined to jump off the cliff, or it'll take you with it no matter how small it is.
Maybe why he needs a change, because that's not providing the therapy. All of that applause. Again, I say athletes are pretty much the only people, actors on Broadway or whatever, that get applauded on their job. They get all that adulation and worship. And
yes, because they're participating in a ritual. What we call the sports world goes back to the ancient time as a ritual to commemorate a Tsar, or Nimrod per se, or as he was known in ancient Rome, Mars.
He's addicted to social media, which to me, I was telling my brother earlier today that social media is like a church for people who self-worship.
That's exactly what it is. That's where you go to develop your cult.
Celebrities that self-worship and are all into themselves. And people got upset with me yesterday because I was bothered when OBJ introduced himself last night. I'm OBJ, I am him. I was like, whoa, bro.
Why is that a surprise? Odell Beckham Jr. was raised up in the Luciferian principles. He's a monarch athlete, and yes, he does worship himself.
And for me, that hits my funny bone, and I hear OBJ talk about God, and I'm like, oh, you him, huh?
Right, he talks about God, but he's not referring to the God of the Bible. This is what a lot of people don't understand. That's why OBJ wears the cross. That's for Tammuz. He's not talking about the Christ of the Bible or the God of the Bible. He views himself as a fleshly manifestation of Tammuz.
I get this mentality of self-worship that we're all of us into it to some degree, and then you get addicted to social media, and that becomes your church of worshipers and followers, and it deludes you, and it makes you start thinking you're better than other people. And so I hear you say about context. I want AB to understand the context of, hey, bro, just because you made a bunch of money doesn't mean you're special. God.
Well, he is special, but that does not mean that his life is of greater value than other people. We have to understand something. When you reach a certain level of prominence or fame, things come easier to you. One would think that meals will be offered to people who don't have the money to pay for them, but instead free meals are offered to the rich and to the wealthy and to celebrities. So it shows you how important it is in this society to set up idols or quote unquote false gods who we call entertainers. Why is that? Because they form a portion of the therapy aspect of this society. People go to movies, they watch TV shows, they watch sporting events to feel happy. Top level athletes make people forget about their problems. That's why they're so important in the continuance of this modern day Babylon.
Blessed you, and you've overcome some incredible things. Smother yourself in humility right now, if possible. Don't let this money and the 2 or 3 million followers you have on Twitter and all fool you into believing that you are him. You're not.
Bruh, it would take divine intervention for that to happen right now. For Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham Jr. It really would. Or some type of cataclysmic event to occur in their lives where they could no longer be the athlete that they were.
Yeah, that's the only reason I was saying take a step back from the game a little bit and just see what transpired in your life, what has happened, who's the reasoning for all of this. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's us. Like, yeah, I mean, we walk the walk every day, man. We walk, like, we put ourselves in some predicaments where at some point we have to defend ourselves, and at some point we have to, pay up for what's happened. So you can't never look at it like, look, man, it's somebody else's fault. At the end of the day, it's your fault for whatever you're going through.
I would just end with...
Thank you, sir. I did a video about that already. I believe it was the Brian Banks video. Everything that befalls us, we have to first look at ourselves. Even if you're walking down the street and a couple dudes jump you, of course they committed a crime, but we have to ask ourselves, damn, how come I didn't see them two fools coming? We always have to self-scrutinize before anything else. That's how we can avoid dumb shit in the future.
This is such a layered conversation. Identity and self-worth and how they're interwoven from people from humble beginnings, it is such an intricate issue.
Yeah.
That's the importance of culture.
Because you don't deeply feel you deserve what you got.
Right, but we have to ask ourselves, why is it that so many black men always have this belief that they don't deserve the good things that they work for? Maybe we have to start to analyze a lot of the jargon that is propagated and put forth on the national airwaves, especially in the sporting aspect of this society. For example, NFL players love to talk about how playing in the NFL is not a right, it's a privilege. Well, how could it be a privilege, per se, if the so-called black man only represents 7% of the U.S. population, but they represent 75% of the NFL? It's very clear that the NFL is targeting black athletes. That means that it's a privilege for the NFL to have the so-called black man in their league. But when we're constantly inundated with this nonsense about how everything that the black man receives is a privilege, meaning he should be happy to have it as if he won the lottery, that feeds into the notion that he does not deserve to have what he has. And then on top of that, the black matriarchy is always there to try to denigrate or marginalize the impact of the so-called black man. And brothers really have to focus in on this. The average so-called black woman believes that she's a member of her own demographic. They do not consider themselves so-called black. They consider the concept of black women being their own race. And cats really have to focus in on that, because if you don't, you're going to be considering somebody as being alongside of you as an ally, when in reality they're a double agent or triple agent per se. Because as I always tell you, brothers, about 98% of these black women are liberal. And the liberal woman has three different faces: the racialist, the globalist, and the feminist.
When you get to that place where you have a lot, we see these implosions. We see these issues come up a lot of times, and he becomes self-defeated in everything he's doing. His greatest issue is the social media activation. His greatest issue is that he is narcissistic. He's believing, since I was born into humility and raised myself out of it, don't you dare tell me now that I need to be internally humble, when that, whatever fire that was, is what got me here.
Agreed.
How do you calibrate that?
That's
All right,
tough.
coming up.
The only way to calibrate it is once he suffers his fall. And I don't believe that he's fully fallen yet. So peace.